Hi everyone, I decided to try making a tier ranking video because I've really been enjoying watching them recently, and I decided that I would do a ranking of all the books that I've read so far in 2020. Actually, it's going to be a ranking of all the books I read in the first quarter of 2020. There are 26 of those, and it is mostly science fiction and fantasy. I actually ranked all of these in a spreadsheet when I read them because that's a thing that I do, but I usually do rankings out of 10, and I decided to do something different today, so I'm kind of going to be re-ranking these based on how I feel about them right now as I go through them. Before I start, I'll just talk about my rating system here. I almost did 5 stars, 4 stars, etc., but I thought that might be kind of boring, so instead I have amazing, pretty great, good, meh, and ugh. Honestly, I don't think there are going to be any books that made it into ugh, although there might be a few meh, but we'll see if I get surprised by anything as I go through this, because I'm not sure if I really remember too much about all of these. So the first book is Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie, and honestly, I think I did really enjoy this book. I thought it was a really smart book. There were a lot of cool things about it, but I didn't love it. It didn't totally click with me. I'm just going to call this one good. Next, we have Angel Mage by Garth. I think this is a little more YA, but honestly, this was a pretty strange book. I picked it up because it had a pretty strong Three Musketeers flavor, and the Three Musketeers is one of my favorite books of all time. This book it was almost like a weird retelling of the Three Musketeers, but fantasy and a lot of gender swaps, and it was just kind of a strange book in the end. The only thing I really enjoyed about it was the Three Musketeers influence. Honestly, I think we're going to call this a meh. Autobiography of a Face by Lucy Greeley. So this was a really well-known book a while ago. It's nonfiction. It's a memoir about Lucy Greeley had cancer, bone cancer as a kid, and they had to remove a part of her jawbone, and just this book is about her experience of being sick and a kid, and also all the issues that she had with the stuff that was going on with her face. I read this because there's actually a book about her friendship with the writer Ann Patchett. I mean, it was written by Ann Patchett, and that book is called Truth and Beauty. I really liked that book a lot. This book, honestly, I mean, she went through some really horrible things, but I didn't actually enjoy the book that much. Sorry to say, but I thought Truth and Beauty was a much more balanced and interesting book, so this was kind of meh for me too. This is Cersei by Madeline Miller. I think the author is. I hope I got that right because I read 2 books by her. This is a retelling of the story of Cersei from Greek mythology. She features pretty prominently in the Odyssey, and this was a really good book. I don't know if I think I even would put it as amazing because I used to be really into classics. I almost went into classics instead of music, and I've read a ton of different Greek mythology retellings, and this is really one of the strongest and most interesting ones that I've ever read. I did not expect to love it as much as I did, but I thought it was a really well done book. Now I think I'll have to jump out of order a little bit because sometimes I read multiple books in a series and I kind of want to rate them in order. So this A Closed and Common Orbit is the second one in this series. So let's see, let's look for The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I thought this was so much fun. It kind of didn't have that much of a plot, but I think I'm going to rate, this was good because there were so many things that were really charming about it and I enjoyed it, but I felt like it was missing a kind of thread tying the whole thing together. It felt very episodic, and then at the end there was a little bit of a climax and a little bit of a story at the end of the book, but mostly it was just about these different characters and their adventures, and that was fine. It reminded me kind of a TV show in that way, where the first season is just you getting to know them, and then there's sort of an arc towards the end. But I actually thought the sequel, which is A Closed and Common Orbit, was much more tightly focused, and it dealt with some really interesting issues about artificial intelligence in this universe that she's writing in. That AIs are not allowed to have bodies. So at the end of the first book, this AI system for the ship gets illegally put into this body because of stuff that happens in the book. But the second book is focusing on different characters, including that AI and what her experiences are like, dealing with basically suddenly having a body and having all these experiences that she wasn't designed to have. So it was a really, really interesting, and I just felt like it had much more of a theme, and I cared more about the characters, and just overall I liked it a lot better. So the third one, which is Record of a Spaceborne Few, unfortunately, I didn't like this one so much. It was the most plotless of the three. There were some times that were interesting. I still really liked the author's concepts of the world and the cultures and the aliens. There's a lot of interesting stuff, but it really had too little plot. I was less interested in the characters. And I mean, so as you can see, we're kind of all over the place with this series, but I will definitely read more books if she writes them in this universe, because two of them I really, really liked. Next, this is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. This is a classic science fiction, and I think I have to say that it was pretty great. There were things about it I didn't care for. It had sort of a mid-century noir detective feeling with all the implicit misogyny and the femme fatale and all this stuff, you know, the detective who's mistrustful of women. There were just some elements of the plot along that line that I really did not care for. But given that it was written quite a long time ago, that doesn't mean we need to overlook those things, but I thought it was very interesting. Also explored artificial intelligence and what that means, and so I thought it was a really interesting book. I would definitely recommend it. I didn't love it the way I love some stuff that's getting written today, but I'm glad I read it, and I thought it was a good book. This is also the book that the movie Blade Runner was based on. I actually haven't seen Blade Runner, so I can't tell you if that is a pro or a con. I already mentioned Anne Patchett once in this video. This is a book by her, The Dutch House. I think this is her newest book. Somewhere between good and meh for me. I'll say it was good. It was good. It wasn't my favorite book by her. This is contemporary fiction, which I do read occasionally, although as you can see, not that often. I think probably it was reading this that made me remember Autobiography of a Face and get that out from the library. But yeah, if you like Anne Patchett, you might like this book. If you don't like Anne Patchett, this probably isn't the thing that will change your mind. The next book is Educated by Tara Westover. This is a book I've heard a lot of people talking about. It is a memoir also of a girl who was raised in sort of a fundamentalist situation where her family was basically living off the grid, and she was pretty isolated from most of society, and she eventually went on to go to college, and it's just the story of her experiences with that. Also, to be warned, there are a lot of themes of sexual abuse that went on within her family and her dealing with that, and that also became a major part of this book. I thought this was good. I think I would probably, if I'm going to be ranking within the tiers, I'd probably put it here. Finder by Suzanne Palmer is another science fiction book. This I enjoyed quite a lot. It's clearly the first entry in a series that's following not really a detective, but he is a finder, as you can tell from the title, and he's sort of an intergalactic repo man who's trying to get the ship back from this petty criminal that has captured it, and in the end a lot of other stuff goes down. I enjoyed this way more than I expected to, actually. I thought it was pretty good, and the next one is coming out soon, so I think I'll definitely be reading that. Forest of a Thousand Lanterns by Julie Dow. I picked this up because I've really been enjoying fantasy set in non-Western cultures. This is kind of more of a YA book, maybe even a younger YA book than I typically read, and I really didn't like this very much, not because of the age target, just because it is a retelling of the story of the evil queen from, I guess, basically Snow White, and what she goes through in order to become empress, and basically it's the story of her becoming evil. But I mean, basically, this book was just her becoming evil. There wasn't a lot interesting that happened. I mean, a lot of stuff did happen, but I didn't really care, and I didn't really enjoy this very much. The next book is Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. It's the second book in the Shades of Magic trilogy. I rated this whole trilogy kind of a solid good. I thought this was probably the weakest entry. I just this week finished reading the third one. So the second one wasn't the greatest follow-up to book one. It kind of, most of the book revolved around this magical competition that really didn't actually have any bearing on the plot whatsoever, and was just a vehicle to get all the characters in the same place. But this whole trilogy I've enjoyed quite a bit, like maybe even more than it deserves. But yeah, it was fun. Okay, I did a whole review video on the Goblin Emperor about how great I thought it was, so it's not going to surprise anyone that I'm putting it up here, and if you want to find out more of my thoughts on that, then you should go watch the review video. In Other Lands by Sarah Rees Brennan. This is an author I really enjoy. I think it leans more towards guilty pleasure, but this book is a humorous book about what happens when a teenager finds out that he can see a basically magical other kingdom, and he goes to school there. It's kind of a magical school story with a twist. There's a lot of parodying of fantasy genre conventions, and also a lot of parodying of sort of typical gender conventions in fantasy and just in society. There's this whole thing where the elves are ruled by women, and they are basically just as sexist as the humans, but in the opposite direction, where they think men are really weak and can't do things and are constantly talking down to them. So this book was really, really funny. I think I would rate this as good. Okay, Ivory Apples by Lisa Goldstein. This is a contemporary fantasy. It started off seeming like I was really, really going to like this book, and then partway through, it just took this weird turn to something else, and in the end, I kind of didn't like it at all. But that was disappointing. But I can't put it all the way down in the ugh category, because I did like the beginning. I did think there was some promise. Something about it just didn't work for me, and I'm not sure. I looked up some reviews, and it seems like some other people had the same experience with that book. This one is a mystery. It's part of a series by Laurie King. This one was called Justice Hall. This is a series that's about, it's basically Sherlock Holmes stories if Sherlock Holmes married a much younger woman who was Jewish and a theologian, and sounds really weird when I talk about it like that, and I was pretty sure when I read the first one that this was going to be like the strangest pseudo fan fiction ever, but this series is actually pretty enjoyable. I think I've basically liked every entry, and this is not the first one. The first one is The Beekeeper's Apprentice, but yeah, I keep forgetting that I read this year, but I'll probably keep making my way through this series slowly. It's not really a priority, but I've generally enjoyed them way more than I expected. Magic for Liars is a mystery set in a magic school. Actually, there wasn't really anything I liked about this. I didn't think the plot was that great. The motivations behind the characters were really strange, and yeah, this just didn't do it for me. Then I read Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I've been hearing a lot about Leigh Bardugo on BookTube. This is an author I was actually not aware of before I started watching BookTube. I think maybe I was under more of a rock, or maybe just more of a YA rock than I realized, because I know her series that she's really well known for is YA. And it's not that I don't like YA, it's just I think I'm actually old enough that YA wasn't really a genre when I was an early teenager or was just starting to become one. So I've really been reading adult fantasy for longer than YA has really been a thing. So I just have missed some stuff. Anyway, Ninth House is a work of adult fiction. It is pretty darn dark, but I liked this a lot. and I would recommend it. And I'm kind of curious to try some of her young adult stuff, even though I've heard some very mixed things from different people about them. Rage of Dragons by Evan Winters is another book that has been super hyped this year, and I tried it. I did think it was a really good book. To me, I do find that it was kind of overhyped, but in another sense, I think it adds a lot to the fantasy genre. I think it is moving the genre forward. It's a good book. It kind of felt like one long fight scene to me. I liked the characters, but I didn't love them. I did not love this book, and I expected to love it. On the other hand, it did keep me up at night. Like, it was very gripping. Honestly, I'm just going to put it at the top of good. I think some people are really going to adore this book. For some reason, it just wasn't 100% my favorite. Song of Achilles is another Greek mythology retelling by Madeline Miller. The really funny thing is, I just went through and cleared out my Goodreads. I wanted to sort of have a fresh start because most of it was from when I was in college or younger, and that was a really long time ago now. And I was so sure I had never read this book, and then I found that I read this book and I rated it really low. And that's really strange because when I read it this year, I rated it really highly. I thought it was great. I thought it was a really smart, deep retelling, and I really love, same as with Cersei, how this author works together so many different things and versions of Greek mythology into a cohesive story that is beautifully told and emotionally effective. But apparently when I was in college, I didn't think so. So it's really funny seeing how your tastes can change over the years. But I think I liked Cersei a little bit better, but this was a great book. I'll put it at the top of pretty great. Next, we have Sourdough by Robin Sloane. Sourdough bread has kind of become a pandemic meme, I know, but I read this beforehand. I just really liked his first book, which was Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore. That is a really charming book. It kind of feels like a fantasy book without really having any magic in it. I really recommend it. It's short, it's sweet. I really liked this book too. I didn't like it quite as much, but whether you're interested in baking sourdough or not, I think I would definitely recommend this book, and for me, it was pretty great. Next, we have Starsight by Brandon Sanderson. This actually came out at the end of last year, and I just waited too long to read it, and everyone was getting really impatient with me, so I read this pretty much. This is one of the first books that I read in the new year. I love Brandon Sanderson. I think this series has a lot to recommend it. It wasn't amazing the way some of his books are amazing. I think I'm going to put it in pretty great. But I am enjoying this series. I do want to know what happens. This was not the book that I expected to come after Skyward, but I liked it. I thought it was good. Maybe I should put it in good. I don't know. Everyone around me liked it a little bit more than I did, but sorry. I think it has to go there. But, I really love Brandon Sanderson. What can I say? So Storm of Locusts and Trail of Lightning are in the same series, so I'll start with Trail of Lightning because that's the first book. I also found these books to be a little overhyped for me. I thought they were really good. I do think, again, kind of like Rage of Dragons, they're adding something really important to the genre. They're adding more diverse perspectives and storytelling, and they're well done. I think they are more urban fantasy and just not completely my thing. So I'm putting them kind of at the top of good. I don't know. I liked them. I like the two about the same. I'm totally going to keep reading this series. I would even recommend them, especially if you like urban fantasy more than I do. But yeah, there was nothing I really disliked about them. It just wasn't completely my thing. And the last one, Strange Devices of the Sun and Moon. This was set in an Elizabethan setting with booksellers and playwrights. There was Christopher Marlowe. And if I had like a penny for every Elizabethan book featuring Christopher Marlowe, I'd probably be rich already. This wasn't good. It was kind of, I don't know, it kept seeming like it was going to be something, and then it was kind of pointless. Maybe no, I think it's probably, yeah, sorry. I didn't hate it while I was reading it. It's just, it was kind of a lot of nothing. So sorry, that kind of ended on a dismal note there, but I can be kind of picky. That's one of the things. I'd rather talk about books that I'm really excited about and not about books that I didn't like. But as you can see, there were a couple things I really, really liked. And I just did a review of Gideon the Ninth, which I also loved. So I've definitely loved some stuff this year, but there were a few more things that were sort of more of a 4-star rating for me. And then there was a lot that I enjoyed. So yeah, that's an overview of what I read in the first quarter of 2020. And this has been pretty fun. So I would totally love to do more tier ranking videos, especially if anyone has any ideas for me of things to rank. That would be most welcome. Leave them down in the comments. And please like this video and subscribe if you want to see more videos from me.